Today, numerous changes have been experienced throughout history. For years, male dominance in various professions has endured. There are records of men who have achieved renown due to their criminal activities and the accumulation of fortunes through shady business practices. Although it is not common to associate women with this type of activities, in recent decades it has been evident that some of them have stood out in this area, challenging a deep-rooted trend and proving to be astute and effective in achieving their objectives. These women are not vulnerable and can lead entire organizations, which is not easy in a world characterized by marked machismo. In this video, we will tell you the stories of some women who have had a significant impact on substance trafficking, opening paths that instill as much fear, and in some cases, even more intimidation than their male counterparts. But before continuing with the video, don't forget to activate the bell to find out about any new video that we upload. And subscribe if you are truly passionate about Narcos stories. Without further ado, let's continue with the video. Let's start talking about Sandra Avila Beltran, also recognized as the Queen of the Pacific. This woman was born into a family of dubious reputation, but with a well-established notoriety in the business field. Some of his relatives enjoyed renown and prestige, and among them stood out Rafael Caro Quintero, who led the Guadalajara organization. Sandra collaborated with her father, Alfonso Avila Quintero. On the maternal side, there were also links to substance trafficking. Only in the 1960s was this activity common. However, it was always accompanied by a large number of homicides. From an early age, Sandra observed determined and aggressive men who resolved conflicts in a non-peaceful manner. Furthermore, they settled their debts with their lives. This became commonplace for her. For this reason, from the age of 3, he dedicated himself to managing his father's income. It was she who was in charge of the accounts in the family business. Given the circumstances surrounding his environment, his personality was forged in an environment of mistrust, and his priorities were focused on his progression in the business. Her physical attractiveness made Amado Carrillo Fuentes, at the age of 21, succumb to her charms. He was the leader of the Juarez cartel, and Sandra began to rise in search of his dominance. While her relationship with Amado was short-lived, it was long enough for Sandra to expand her aspirations in the business. Making use of her beauty, she entered into marriages that clearly had a strategic purpose. Their partners had a common characteristic. They were former members of police institutions. They had a status that facilitated substance trafficking. In the end, she was widowed because her husbands ended up being murdered. Sandra watched the rise of Los Líderes, and through her connections also maintained a romantic relationship with Joaquin Archibaldo Guzman, alias El Chapo. It is not clear if this relationship was only limited to making deals between the sheets, or if there was a true feeling of love. The truth is that La Reina del Pacifico played a crucial role in many of the Sinaloa cartel's relationships. With a planned strategy, she began an adventure with Juan Diego Espinosa, known as El Tigre. This link allowed him to establish contact with the Norte del Valle cartel in Colombia, with which he began trafficking tons and tons of cocaine. This brought him a substantial increase in his fortune. However, the seizure of 9 tons of merchandise left it exposed. This happened in 2001. You can imagine the number of shipments he managed to complete before this method was discovered. All of this transportation was carried out across the Pacific, which led to Sandra Avila receiving the nickname the Queen of the Pacific. The authorities turned their attention to her and began to look for a way to capture her. They believed that by stopping her, they could weaken the Sinaloa cartel. Finally, in 2007, the Queen was arrested. In her defense, she maintained that her businesses were related to the sale of textiles. No human force could change that version, since she never gave in to that statement. While in prison, he experienced a change in his ostentatious life, and through the tricks of his lawyers, improved his conditions in prison. He had access to chef-prepared meals, could consume alcohol, and enjoyed other privileges. After his release, he moved to Guadalajara, where he currently resides. The second female figure that we will mention is Jocelyn Alejandra Niño, known as La Flaca. Unlike the Queen of the Pacific, this woman's role in the world of organized crime was more oriented toward carrying out violent work as opposed to the accumulation of wealth. Her life was always modest, but her surroundings directly involved her in violence. From the age of 18, his criminal history began to develop. He joined the Gulf Cartel, assuming specific homicide functions. He carried out orders from his bosses without hesitation, sending lives into the abyss of the unknown. Although his life was marked by transience and anonymity, his face was not known until a photograph of him in military clothing was leaked online. From that moment on, his alias became recognized, since it was associated with the image of Sana Muerte. It wasn't long before she fell into the hands of her enemies, who did not hesitate to use her as an example to their rivals. His death did not pass peacefully, and mercilessly, limbs began to appear scattered throughout the city. The only thing that allowed his complete identification was a tattoo he had on his skin with the word "boy" in reference to his last name and his youthful appearance. This was because he had ceased to exist at a very young age. Now we will talk about Maria Guadalupe Lopez Esquivel, known as La Catrina. This woman was born in a modest home, the daughter of a countryman, and grew up in a small Mexican town. Maria Guadalupe did not want to maintain a simple life, and she did not like the idea of attending school either. For this reason, he ended up becoming emotionally involved with a member of the Four Letters Cartel, Miguel Fernandez. However, her relationship with Miguel was not based on love. Rather, he considered it as a springboard to achieving the life change he longed for. After months, Maria Guadalupe had risen in the organization and began to receive income with exorbitant sums. She began to flaunt her luxuries on social media, which led to the alias Katrina being attributed to her, in relation to the famous figure of the Festival of the Dead, widely known in Mexico. Katrina assumed leadership of a group of well-armed men, and this woman had no mercy when it came to eliminating her adversaries. His orders were carried out without showing inferiority to any rival, despite the fact that the majority of his mercenary squad was made up of men. Extortion, murders, and kidnappings are attributed to this group. In 2011, a group of police officers carried out a raid to find Katrina's whereabouts, but were surprised by her bodyguards. The latter ambushed the officers, who managed to survive. They claimed that they heard the voice of a woman giving orders to eliminate the police officers unceremoniously, and that this voice corresponded to Maria Guadalupe, also known as La Catrina. In 2020, La Catrina was not yet 30 years old and was intercepted by agents of the Mexican authorities. His men responded to his defense, but this time the authorities carried out an effective operation, resulting in a gunshot wound to La Catrina's neck. Despite efforts to transport her by helicopter during the journey, Maria Guadalupe, La Catrina, bled to death. The last woman we will highlight in this video is Enidine Arellano Felix, a figure linked to recognized surnames in the world of Mexican drug trafficking. She is the sister of the leaders of the disappeared Tijuana cartel and niece of the iconic capo Miguel Ángel Felix Gallardo. Enidine trained professionally as an accountant and used her profession to handle money laundering generated by her family's operations. When the confrontation between the different cartels broke out, Enidina would begin a relationship with an individual close to El Chapo Guzman. His link with Armando Lopez was not seen well by the Arellano Felix, who chose to eliminate him, which triggered a bloody war between the Sinaloa cartel and the Arellano. Enidina, motivated by humiliation, set out to rise in the organization. After the death of the cartel's financial leader, he successfully assumed this role, managing to gain ground. When her brothers were imprisoned, she took over the leadership of the cartel. This woman approaches conflicts diplomatically and avoids resorting to violence, although it is not ruled out that at times she may resort to atrocious acts through her subordinates. This is why the alias La Jefa is attributed to her. She is extremely careful with her words, and obscene expressions are rarely heard from her. He avoids homicides at all costs and operates his business through agreements and bribes in the trade of illegal substances. Thanks to his way of operating, he has not been a very prominent figure for the authorities. It is rumored that Enidina is still La Jefa of Tijuana. There are numerous women who have left a mark in the world of drug trafficking. In this video, we only mentioned some of them. If you want us to talk about other women who have stood out in this field, don't hesitate to tell me. Leave us your opinions and thoughts in the comments box. That's all for today. I hope you liked the video. If so, give it a like and activate the bell to find out about any new video we upload. And subscribe if you are a true fan of Narcos stories. See you next time.